Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the introduction. I don't know if legend is accurate, but I've been in the space a long time, and it's great to see events like this, the two Johns that put this together, the Miner Summit. This is what Bitcoin is. We are all working together to empower humans across the globe for greater freedom and individuality. You get conferences like this popping up that are important to the ecosystem. And unlike any other industry, the better all of you do, the more valuable this network becomes. And so whether you like the people sitting next to you or not is completely irrelevant. If you like their messaging or not is irrelevant. If they create innovation and advancements in technology, that's what's going to push this network further. And as you see what's happening around us in the markets, it's hard to miss out on the fact that the price of Bitcoin is irrelevant except on a capital market side. The price of Bitcoin is going to be dependent on two things. And in the decade that I've been here, we started off at Bitcoin at $30, $60, and it jumped up to $200 and then fell to $100 and then went to $500 and fell to $200. You see these swings. But unanimously what happens with these swings is the lows become higher and the highs become higher as well. So you need to have a long-term outlook on this industry. If you're in it for a quick turn of a commodity price, you're going to have trouble realizing that gain within a short time period. It's really a long-term network effect that we're watching grow at a trajectory that is massively faster than trajectories of traditional technology and how they've grown in the past. So when people say the adoption of this network is slow, it only feels like that because you're in the middle of it, but it's really happening at a rate that is very, very quick. If you want to compare this disruptive technology, Bitcoin, to another technology that was invented, you really have to go back to computers and the internet itself. And you'll see that it took decades for people to really understand how to utilize computers properly. The personal computer was set out in 1975. You didn't see the internet come out, for about 10 years after that. And then you saw civilian internet in the 90s. And then by the end of the 90s, I think only 70 million Americans, so 30 years after computers came out, you had 70 million Americans with computers. Today, there's over 100 million people in the world, the global network, that are utilizing Bitcoin. They're utilizing the Bitcoin global network, and it's really hard to measure that statistic, but companies like Coinbase put out that they have 90 million accounts. You're seeing that the user and adoption base is growing. And that's really the trick here, because what all of you provide are the infrastructure and the rails for this network. And what this network provides to the world is property rights and greater individual freedoms. And so having all of you building the network rails that provide global freedoms really rely upon the people in the world understanding what this technology brings them. So adoption is what's going to grow this network. And the only way you grow adoption is through education, because the network is not intuitive. It's a very unique concept in technology that disrupts all the legacy systems that have ever been created for the entirety of humanity. Every network, every system, every government, every bank is a proof of stake network. All networks that have been created are controlled by the stakeholders. The stakeholders control the networks. And so what you're seeing is these proof of stake networks are disrupted by the new technology and the only innovation, the true innovation in this space, which is proof of work technology. The proof of work technology has not existed as a consensus mechanism until Bitcoin Network. And what the Bitcoin Network does to stakeholder-dominated networks is it disrupts them to their core. No longer are you reliant on the benevolence or the mercy of the stakeholders. The consensus mechanisms that you all run in your data centers, those are going to run the consensus mechanism for this new system. And what that means at the end of the day is, and what this goes back to, and pretty much the most complicated part of what all of you do, but it's the most important part to really understand. What you're all running is a new operating system for the world. Right now, today, every bank, every government, every corporation relies on an operating system called double entry accounting. Double entry accounting runs everything. The banks, the governments, the corporations today all utilize double entry accounting to write to their ledgers. Without a ledger, right, without a ledger, you have nothing, because the banks, without a proper and unalterable ledger or a corruptible ledger, if the ledger is corrupted, it's impossible to know what you have. And so for the entirety of humanity, through all of these double entry ledger accountings, technologies that have existed since the 1400s, the ledgers have been corruptible. They've been corruptible by the stakeholders. Stakeholders have had the ability to change and alter your ledger forever until now. And the ledger stakeholder run systems, they're not going to go out quietly. The disruptiveness of the stakeholders losing power over the ledgers is causing the blowback on this industry. And the blowback, in the short time period I have, the blowback really comes in the face of science and true facts. And the two biggest ones are the energy footprint that all of you utilize. Now, people like to say we don't need to get into an energy argument because the energy is used for a valuable purpose. And I agree with that. The energy is used for a valuable purpose. But being part of a society that has a concern with energy, you still have to explain the footprint. And so the biggest misconception that I've seen over the years are when people say the Bitcoin miners, which is all of you, and there's confusion on what a Bitcoin miner is. So when you talk to people that don't understand this industry, you should explain to them that a Bitcoin miner is a computer server. That's all it is. It's a computer server, just like your TV. It's just like the computer servers that live in Amazon and Azure. They are computer servers. They take in electricity, and guess what comes out of them? Heat, no pollution. There are no carbon particles. There are no other emitted pollutants that come out of a computer server. Just like there's no carbon that comes out of that camera. There's no carbon that comes out of these screens. What comes out of computer servers is just heat that gets dissipated outside of the building or chilled. So it's really important for, number one, people to understand the Bitcoin miner is just a computer server. A Bitcoin mining company is a data center company. You're building a box that brings in electricity and puts the machines inside the box and powers them with the electricity. So that's all it is. You guys are all building different types of data centers, whether they're remote, whether you can move, whether they're mobile, or whether they're large infrastructure buildings. We're in the data center business, and what lives inside these data centers are computer servers that emit no pollutants. And so now that everybody has clarity on what that is when you're talking to other people, I know all of you have an idea of what all of this stuff is, but the general public does not. It does not. There's 8 billion people on the planet, maybe 100 million people within Bitcoin. How many of them do you think know what Bitcoin mining is? A very small percentage. And so it's really your job to educate people on what this industry does and what the infrastructure is. And so once you explain away that we're in the data center business and these are computer servers, the next most common FUD that you hear every single day is that this network uses too much energy. It uses an intensive amount of energy from the global grid of energy that's generated globally. And I think it's very important to point out the differences between global energy use and local energy use, because there is a big misunderstanding with people that conflate global energy and local energy grids. Globally, and I've said this in a lot of different talks, but globally it's really important to point out to people when they say this one thing that they say all the time, and you just saw it again in the New York Times the other day. They say the Bitcoin network uses more energy than a small country, and they list the Netherlands or New Zealand. I think the other day they listed out Afghanistan. And so they list a country in the world, and they say the Bitcoin network uses more energy than that. What that is very confusing and irrelevant, because they don't frame the amount of energy that that country uses on a global basis. In order to understand if a country uses a lot of energy, the most important statistic in this entire industry, when you talk about energy on a global basis, is how much energy is generated globally on a yearly basis. What's the annual amount of energy generated every year? And we know that answer. British Petroleum, Exxon, all of the biggest energy generation companies, they put out the metrics on how much energy that they generate every year, and that's about 160,000 terawatt hours of energy. So that statistic, 160,000 terawatt hours of energy, is massively important for all of you to understand and to be able to explain to people. As I've been doing this for a long time, this statistic resonates with people that think that this network uses too much energy. So now you know how much global energy is used or is generated, 160,000 terawatt hours of energy. In 2017, when I started building my first enterprise-grade facility for Core, we were building that up in the Appalachian Mountains. The network had about 2.5 million people on it, and Newsweek and our buddies at the World Economic Forum came out with an article that said that this network, the Bitcoin network, is so bad for the environment and the global energy generation footprint. It's so bad that it needs to be turned off immediately, or by the year 2020, 2 years ago, by the year 2020, this network literally will consume, in quotes, all of the world's energy. All the world's energy will be consumed by this network by 2020 if it's not turned off immediately. And so I'm in the middle of constructing the first enterprise-grade facility in America, and you can guess the dismay that that caused and the amount of questions that I had to field. So I had to get involved in understanding the energy footprint. And so now you know that the world generates 160,000 terawatt hours of energy. And you also know that the World Economic Forum in 2017 said that this network would use all the world's energy. So that's pretty close to 160,000 terawatt hours back in 2017. Well, we know their prediction was wrong, right? Because the lights are on and this microphone works, so there's some energy left. But how wrong were they? How wrong was the World Economic Forum? How wrong was Newsweek? How wrong were the other thousands of people that copy-pasted that article all over the world? Well, we know how big the Bitcoin network's energy footprint is globally. We know that number. Even the detractors of the network agree that this number is appropriate and correct. It's somewhere around 250 terawatt hours of the world's energy. 250. The global Bitcoin network is 250 terawatt hours of 160,000 terawatt hours. How could they be so wrong? What is the percentage? How much energy is currently being used? Well, it's about 10 to 16 basis points of the world's energy that's being used today. In 2022, 2 years after the Armageddon prediction by the World Economic Forum, this network uses 99.984 approximate percent less than they said it would be using. So the predictive ability of the World Economic Forum and companies like Newsweek, they don't work. They didn't work. And the reason you have to ask yourself, why or how can organizations that have massive amount of analysts and researchers and trillions of dollars at their disposal, if you're the World Economic Forum and the International Monetary Fund, how are they so wrong? Well, obviously they didn't care that they were wrong. They were putting out a hit piece on this network for a very specific reason. And that reason is this network disrupts legacy stakeholder-controlled networks. And it all goes, at the end of the day, back to accounting. And so the ability to explain this, and why I kind of went into the way I explain it to people in a very short 20-minute speech, and I'm going to get off the stage because I think I'm going over. But the way you explain this to people is going to be the most important part of your business. You have to be able to explain this network properly to the people that give it no value. Why does it have value? Well, there's accounting, transactional, economic value to the network, and you should understand all of that. And then you should understand what you actually do, what a miner is, what your buildings are, what they're compared to. Why is this network looked differently than a data center that's built by Google or Amazon? And when you get to it, and there was an EPA letter recently that we all responded to collectively as an organization. The conflation between energy generation facilities, there's places that generate energy, whether it's using fossil fuel or wind or sunlight, and then there's a data center company that attaches to the electrical grid. So you have a data center company, which is the business most of you are in, and then you have energy generation facilities, which is the business most of you are not in. And so what they like to do is conflate those two categories and say that Bitcoin miners are polluting the planet. Well, they're not. There's no pollutants that come out of a Bitcoin mining data center. So just overall, if I could give you any advice that you would care to listen to, it's really be careful on the terminology that you use and understand the statistics and the facts. This network is under attack, coordinated attack by people that are very good at marketing. They're very good at marketing negative fact patterns. They're narratives that have very little basis in facts. And the facts in this industry, they're on your side. They're on your side. There's a lot of really good material on the Bitcoin Mining Council website. If any of you care to go there, there's 12 pages of charts that go through some of the statistics that I went over today and a lot of other ones that are really, really instrumental in coloring this industry in the proper light. And at that, I'd like to say thank you all.